welcome. It's a wonderfully overcast day in the garden today. The sun's not forecast to break through till late afternoon, and then for the rest of the week it's going to be baking sunshine again. So I'm hoping to take advantage of this nice cool day and get plenty of garden jobs done. First job on the list is to mulch these potatoes that I didn't get round to last week. Now they need a dry grassy mulch, not a fresh cut grass mulch. So I'm going to steal some grass mulch from the squash that's already dried out and put it on the potatoes. Then either later today or tomorrow I'll cut more grass and I can remulch the squash beds. Here's the potato patch before it gets its new layer of mulch. And around my squash tents I've already got lots of lovely dry mulch. It was wet mulch when I first put it down. It's been so hot and sunny, it's dried out to a beautiful hay, ready to use on the potatoes. Now to put lots of that lovely dried grassy hay mulch around these potato plants, stuffing it all in between them. In this bed I've got King Edward potatoes in one half and I don't know what on the other half. Potatoes, yes, but what variety I can't remember. It had a strange name that I'm not used to and I didn't write it down. So as I'm mulching round each plant, I'm pushing the leaves in an upward position and putting the mulch in around them so that at least everything's still growing upwards. I'm not bending these leaves down and covering them in mulch. I'm pointing them in an upwards direction. Where are you? There. This is going on wonderfully deep. More than I thought I was going to use. I'm really pleased. Well, I don't know if it looks any different on the camera, but we're quite a bit deeper than we were before. Big, thick, grassy mulch. Big, thick hay mulch, because this is dry grass. So these are my tiny, very late tomatoes. They were sown late this year. I can't remember exactly when, but probably not that long ago. It's been ridiculously hot, which tomatoes generally are very happy about, but they're stuck in these little tiny pots. Now I have predominantly sown little cherry tomato varieties this year. There are a couple of Gardener's Delights in amongst this lot. I've no idea which ones they are though. Probably the slightly bigger plants, but I'm not sure. Now these tomatoes desperately need to be in the ground. Not just because of the time of year, but because they're obviously showing signs of stress. I'll bring it up close so you can see. This slight purpling colour of the stem and under the leaves indicates to me that this tomato is not happy. We got roots coming out the bottom yet. No, it doesn't seem to be pot bound. Might be a bit too wet, to be honest. I've been keeping them very well watered in this tray because it's been so hot. I don't want them to dry out. Is anyone else coming out the bottom? No. What are the roots like? Take a look. Oh, not bad. We have a reasonable root system. I'd like to see a few more though. But for whatever reason, this plant is not happy. This purple stem is the indication. This is not a happy tomato plant. Maybe it's hungry. I don't know, but I need to get it in the ground. Put you back in your pot for a second. So now it's a cool shady day and I can bear to be in the polytunnel. Going to get these planted. I won't be planting all of them. Going to plant as many as I have space for and give a few away. Now the one thing that gives me hope of still getting a reasonable tomato harvest is there are a few volunteer plants popping up around the polytunnel. Now I have started watering other things, and this happens regularly, year on year. I get volunteer tomatoes and I usually let one or two of them grow, and they always seem to give me a harvest. My volunteer plants are no bigger than these at the moment. That's what gives me the hope and the confidence that these plants will manage to reach maturity and give me a harvest. It may be very late in the season, late August, early September, but we will get a tomato harvest. But I definitely won't get one if I don't get them out of these pots and in the ground. Just for comparison, in amongst the sweet corn stalks, here's a volunteer tomato looking very strong and healthy compared to my weedy little seedling in a pot. There are quite a few volunteers popping up under here. I've got one there and a tiny one in front of it. I'm going to weed those out and just leave this first strongest seedling. Well, I've planted 14 of my little tiny tomato plants. There are 7 in a row in this bed, and I've got 7 in a row in a neighbouring bed, along with the peas that are already growing. Just like the melon plants I was planting last week, I've dug a trench in the soil just in front of my row of tomatoes, so it'll be really easy to water. Just pour water into this trench and let it soak in nice and deep to the roots. I've also planted 2 little gherkin plants here amongst the pea trellis, and now I'm off to plant some cucumbers. Next on my planting list for today are cucumbers. I've got 2 cucumber plants. Cucumber Consa, it's an F1 variety. I've not grown Consa before. These have already been potted up into bigger pots, so they're nice, strong, healthy plants to start with. I'm definitely going to put one at the end of this bed. I'm not sure where I'm going to plant the second one. I might put it next to it, or I might find the end of one of my other beds. Perhaps the end of the sweet corn might be quite good actually. So I'll get this one in and have a think. This sunshine's here a bit early. It's only 12 o'clock and we're not supposed to see it till at least 3. But thankfully I'm nearly done in here. So let's fill this hole with water. I don't know if I said, I'm so used to saying it. So just the same as all the things I plant, I'm going to dig a hole, fill it with water and wait for that water to soak away. Then I'll plant my plants. Guarantee they get a real good start with a deep moist soil down at their roots. It's good when it takes a while to soak away. Makes me think the ground around it is already quite damp. And when I do water the plants, it won't all run away really quickly. It'll hang around for a while and give them a chance to soak it up with their roots. There, that'll do. I've waited long enough. Oh. Anyhow. Put your new plant in that nice damp hole and push the soil back in around it. Then give it some gentle pressure just to firm it into position. Now then, where's cucumber number 2 going to go? I think I'll put my second one at the far end of this bed. Can I have one at each end? Well, I was going to plant it at the end of this bed, but I see I've already got a rather healthy looking volunteer tomato. So I'll leave that there instead. Find somewhere else for my cucumber. Perhaps on the other side. Finally, the polytunnel is starting to look like a respectable garden space again. Now I've got some plants in the ground. Let's take a quick look around and see what we've got growing. Keep our fingers crossed and it'll carry on growing. As I said, it's going to be ridiculously hot again next week, so I think I'll need plenty of watering in here. As I come in the door, the first thing I see is the fish pond, and the pink water lilies are flowering this week. They're looking gorgeous, and the fish are being nice and calm today. They've already been fed, so they've got nice full tummies and just swimming around gracefully. The white water lilies are still flowering, so lots of flowers on the pond today. To the right of the pond, I've got my potting station where a lot of my little tiny young seedlings start off. But on this top shelf above my bench, I've got some short dahlias. Now they're not short because they're restricted in pots, they're short because they're short growing varieties. This yellow one has been flowering for about 2 weeks now, and its little pink friend has just started to join it. They really need to get planted outside, but I just haven't found the time yet. Just as I come in the door, I've got some apple trees sitting in pots. They're about 3 foot tall at the moment. And planted in the ground is this persimmon tree. It used to be outdoors. About 2 years ago it got seriously hammered with the early spring frosts, and I was thrilled it started coming back from the roots. Now it's not a grafted tree, and I recognise the leaf shape, so I know it's the persimmon that I wanted and ordered. So I planted it in here at very much the wrong time of year. It was the early summer. It's doing really nicely. Settled in here fantastically. It's a much better environment for it, especially through the winter. Lots of volunteer antirrhinums all around it flowering. As I carry on down the tunnel past the pond, got all the pineapple lilies shooting up. No sign of flower buds yet, but they'll come. And one random lily that pops up here every year growing next to them. Here's a closer look at that gorgeous lily. It's got lots more buds to come. That's a lot of flowers this year. Smells gorgeous too. Carrying on down, I've got a bench seat to sit on and a box full of cabbage starts. And at my feet I have the remainder of the melons I haven't planted yet. Next job is to get these ones potted up into slightly bigger pots till I decide what I'm going to do with them. Grow them in pots or find a place to plant them in the ground. And over to my left I have a watering tray of random things that I don't know what to do with. There's actually a couple of potato plants at the front here in pots. Some more lilies at the back. And I don't know if it's in shot. We've got a gladioli that should be out in the garden. This really pretty small gladioli is supposed to be out in the new meadow garden, but hasn't been planted yet. We can enjoy it out there next year instead. For now, I'm just going to enjoy it in here. Now for the first of the raised garden beds. I've got some volunteer strawberry plants at the end here, and last week I planted in the melon plants. So we've got melons on both sides of this trellis. 6, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it was really good. I went and wrote some labels, so they're all labelled up. Carrying on down, next we have the sweet corn, which has been in here for quite a few weeks now. Looking good and strong. I'm very happy. There's a volunteer tomato at the end here as well that I'm going to leave. Oh, and I don't know if you can see it. There is a strawberry just about. This next bed along has another row of melons in it. I've not been so diligent with the labels on these, so they're just melons all mixed up. And one cucumber plant at the end, and the first cucumber plant I put in today is at the opposite side, up near the front. In this same bed, row of melons, a cucumber at each end, I have this plant in the middle, and it's a passion fruit plant grown from passion fruit seed from a passion fruit bought in the supermarket grocery aisle. It's overwintered in here now for 2 winters. This year was a particularly hard winter for us. Last year I had 3 of these plants here, and this is the only one that managed to survive. But it's coming back very nicely. And when I cleared away all of last year's tomato plant growth, I was surprised to see how much of this trellis, this passion fruit plant, was actually covering. Even though all its leaves went brown and died off, I could still see where it had been growing through the summer. I hadn't really noticed it last year. It was just drowning in a sea of tomato plants. So it has been getting a bit of TLC, and it's coming back and reviving really well. It's a couple of years old now, so it should have a good, deep, strong root system. That'll definitely help. I don't mind if it never has fruit. I just really like to see what its flowers look like, what sort of colour they have. The next bed along has nothing planted in it. That's not true. There's one little strawberry plant here on the end. But the rest of the things sitting on here are just sitting in watering trays. Mainly young flower plants to go in the flowering meadow. And here we have more dahlias. These were the small dahlia tubers I'd overwintered last year. Didn't plant into the meadow because there wasn't space at the time, so put them in pots. They're all coming up really well, just like the ones up in my potting station. Need to be getting them in the ground. That's it, we're at the other end. So the first end bed on this side is just some random things going to seed. Moving up on this side, my fennel plant has just gone flop. It's just got too big and tall and can't hold itself up. It's all still growing though, and not quite all of it has gone flop. It's taller than me, no wonder it's fallen over. Just going to leave it here, sprawled out and fallen over. It'll be fine. Oh, I nearly forgot. I don't know if you can still see me. So in behind the fennel is where the thornless blackberry moved itself in. So I've tied a few of its branches to the big support poles of the tunnel. I'm perfectly happy to have it in here. The birds can't steal the fruit. This next bed along is where I've planted a row of tomato plants today. Growing in the path at the edge of this bed is this physalis. It was starting to flop a bit like the fennel, and it does that every year. So I've actually tied some string around it and wrapped it up to the top to hopefully hold it up out of the way a bit, just to keep it tidy. Oh, and yet another random antirrhinum. Next on the tour are my garden peas. It's really too hot for them in here at the moment, especially with the amount of gorgeous sunshine we've been getting. And underneath them is a whole row of volunteer lettuces. I haven't planted any lettuce seed this year. I'm just enjoying all the volunteers. On the opposite side of this trellis, I've got the first row of tomato plants I put in today. So as the peas die out with the heat, the tomatoes can take over. Last bed on the tour. I've got a few little tiny pea plants in here. They were meant to give a succession of harvest, but it's just too hot. Some volunteer nasturtiums in this shocking orange and gorgeous red. More volunteer lettuces. I'm going to pinch some leaves. I'm really loving this fluffy green one. Been munching off it for weeks. And behind me are strawberry plants in pots. They're last year's runners that were potted up in early spring. I've had a few strawberries off of them. Some cabbages and Brussels sprouts going to seed. A volunteer tomato that's probably the biggest specimen I have at the moment. At the first corner of this bed, I have this beautiful orange flower, Rudbeckia. It's overwintered in here for 2 years now, so it's definitely a perennial inside the polytunnel. Might actually survive outside for me here in the south, but I've not tried it yet. I might take a chunk of it from the front and put it out in the flowering meadow and see how it gets on. And here's where I planted my 2 gherkin plants today. Here at the end of the tunnel tour, we have the curry plant. It really loves it in here, and I really love having it in here. It is actually in a pot, but it's been sat here for so long, it's sent its roots down into the ground. The only way it's ever coming out of that pot is if I cut it away. Seems to be doing all right. Just going to leave it where it is. Now I need to get out of here. I am dripping wet. We're back to the pond. If you've enjoyed today's video, click that like button and let me know. Click subscribe and YouTube will make sure you see my next video. Bye for now and thanks for watching. And remember, whatever you're doing, have fun doing it.